Okayama International Circuit may not be the Japanese circuit that we all think of first when we think of Formula One racing in Japan especially, but it has hosted Formula One. It still hosts Super GT, and it's a free track on iRacing.com, leading a lot of leagues to use it as some easy base content to add to a schedule, and that's exactly what we're doing this season in the Simpit Radical Series. We've got the Radical SR8 Okayama International Circuit, two old pieces of content that are both a heck of a lot of fun, and quite frankly, I think my favorite Japanese circuit on the service. Welcome to Pit Stop TV. My name is Andrew Cardinale IV, Gary Weaver, and Joshua, I gotta get this right, Stevenson, Peterson, there we go, Peterson. I knew I was gonna completely forget, but anyways, Gary Weaver and Joshua Peterson alongside this evening. This is weird. We go from having nobody along with me last week to having two commentators here today, but I'm so glad to have you guys both here on the broadcast. Gary, I'm going to throw first to you. I already mentioned it's a free piece of content here on the iRacing.com service, Okayama International Circuit. It's gone through a few name changes. I'm sure Joshua could fill us in on all of those, but let's just talk about it in its current, I guess, iteration and current name. This place is fantastic. I really enjoy this, and a lot of iRacing members have to go through a lot of races at Okayama if they want to move up the road ranks.
It is very much, at least for me, a bit of a love-hate track, but I absolutely always enjoyed in the Mazda MX-5, both when even before the modern iteration of the Mazdas had gotten scanned and inserted into the iRacing service, the sequential version. I drove this back in, well, pretty much 2013, 2014, so definitely with the essentially 2016 iteration of the Mazda MX-5, with just, it's an absolutely fantastic track for slipstream, and you see all the way from turn 4 to turn 5, that is very much a passing zone, and some people, and maybe a few too many people, like to decide, you know what, I'm pretty sure there's enough space and brakes on the right hand side, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and most of the time it usually doesn't.
Yeah, there's a lot of on-throttle time here at Okayama, of course, from turn 11 all the way to turn 1, very long front stretch, and from turn 2 all the way to turn 4 Atwood Curve. Again, a very long period of on-throttle. You don't have to lift, it's just up through the gears and trying to navigate the Moss S into Atwood Curve, on the throttle again all the way to the hairpin, and then even in that kind of infield feeling section through Revolver, Piper, Redmond, and Hobbs, there's still little passing opportunities so long as you set up correctly, especially through 8 and 9 Redmond and Hobbs. If you set things up right there, you just might get a pass made. Well, let's talk about the standings coming into this afternoon. Of course, 4 races down, 6 races to go, including today. This is really the halfway point in the series, Josh, and you can see Terry Crouch has got a stranglehold on the pro side, but Christian Theis has kind of fallen back and opened things up. Ola Sarnquist only 3 points back coming into this round. Callum McLeod has been fantastic. Oxenzollers been fantastic. The top 4, maybe even top 5 or 6 is completely open right now in AM.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's a hot battle going into the 5th round here in Okayama. Ola could end up on top at the end of this. Maybe Callum or Oxenzola. It's really a hot contest going over there. On the pro side, there's a little bit that going on. Amanda White is 16 points behind Terry Crouch. The piece is 25 points behind. So Terry's got a bit more has definitely got more of a cushion than Sotis. But the M side is definitely something to watch for throughout this race and even next week at Suzuka.
Certainly a lot to talk about within this series, and you mentioned next week at Suzuka. Let's talk about the schedule for this season as practice comes to a close, and Terry Crouch leads the session by 6/10 over Reinhard Heibel and Randall White. Fastest amateur driver on track, Christian Theis, as to be expected. But here's the schedule for this season. Spa opened things up way back in March, and now as we're in the very last day of April, and we've got May fast approaching, this is the halfway point, as I mentioned, in the season, Gary. A lot of really cool racetracks, but a lot of variety as well. I mean, you go from Spa straight to Circuit Zandvoort over to Spain. 3 Formula One racetracks, but very different levels of scans here on the iRacing.com service. Spain was under the lights, then Bathurst last week up and over the mountain. Now Okayama, a very much throwback circuit here. Suzuka next week, again, a Formula One circuit. Then Long Beach, an IMSA IndyCar circuit. Then Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, an IMSA and NASCAR Truck Series track for the most part, until we go to Road America, which of course is pretty much the jewel of American road racing these days, and then Brazil to close things out. We are all over the place with this season, and we're only halfway through.
I see Long Beach and it immediately sticks out to me. I would never expect I'd never expect the Radical SRH to run at Long Beach especially. So that's going to be a very intriguing, but pretty much a whole wide variety, and essentially I think pretty much just about a worldwide tour of some of the major tracks, both on the European and North Americans. Well, North American, both. I guess we'll go just the west side of the world. So we'll go with that. And it's absolutely fantastic. And ending at Interlagos is amazing. It tugs at my heartstrings a little bit because even I never got to see the when F1 used to run the Interlagos circuit as the final race. I've never really seen that. So it's cool that even if it's just a sim on iRacing or a league on iRacing, doesn't mean you can't just not have it on the schedule.
And it is one of South American courses. Of course, we have a couple of courses that kind of get down closer to Mexico and beyond, but we have nothing in Mexico yet. We have nothing in South America that I can think of anyways. I'm pretty sure Brazil is still the only one we have in South America. I can't think of anything else.
Yeah, it's the only one, really.
Yeah, we added Circuit de Jerez, but that's in Spain. So yeah, we still have nothing else in South America other than Interlagos. And certainly, if you want to make a world tour out of a schedule, it is very much necessary to have on your series schedules. Well, let's go ahead, move on into the qualifying session as things open up. You can see your class guide up to the top right. Cars on track, Terry Crouch, everybody on track except for Mike Nickham, actually, the Batmobile. Everybody getting their early laps in. Here's a look at your points leader, car 59, and Gary. A weird spot in, I guess, the points battle. 16 points coming into today. It's like just enough for him to relax, not enough for him to completely check out. He's got to be honest, he really can't let up today at all.
And this is one of those things where you just have to go all out, like you just mentioned. Yeah, you can't really relax. It's a very confusing thing to be dealing with. You look at the point standings going in, you think, okay, well, this is what I can do, this is what I can't do. So what exactly should I be doing? Should I just be going all out? Should I be relaxing? And if I was in this position, I'd rather take the benefit of the doubt and just go all out. As he goes, for the moment, first place on the board.
And Josh, of course, you've watched this series. You're in the Simpit Discord. You're very familiar with these guys. We've seen Reinhard Heimel be fantastic this season and really unbeatable when he's on track. But in practice, a big separation between Reinhard and Terry Crouch on the timing charts. And, of course, we'll see these times pick up over the course of the session. But Reinhard gets to turn a time. It's going to be interesting watching this battle in qualifying, rather.
Yeah, it's... let's see who tops. Let's see if Reinhard can top Terry throughout this qualifying session. But if not, that's okay. We still got a number of races left to go.
The big thing for Reinhard Heimel, part-time this season, has missed a few races, not able to carry himself to the top of the standings with just a couple of wins he's got. But look at that, fastest in qualifying on lap number 2. For his run. Looks like lap 1 is a wash now as he begins lap number 3 and is right on pace with everybody else. He's got 3.5 tenths to work with. Back to second place, Terry Crouch, and that is a large margin, especially after Terry led that practice session. But here we go, Terry Crouch to the start-finish line, and looks like he picks up a bunch and should be, purple by nearly 6 tenths.
That's a bit terrifying if I'm anybody who's looking at the scoring, because everyone was, wow, that is fascinating. So we'll see if anyone can even at least break into the 123s. Let's see, David Payne goes up to third fastest for the time being. And Putikelis goes up to second place on the board at 124.124. So he's the closest so far to at least catch Terry, about 2.92 or 0.292 seconds back.
Watching James Dowling down the backstretch into turn number 5, following another car just ahead. That might be Andrew Slizen. So it's David Clymer, actually. And look at that. Reinhard Heimel fires back, going up by nearly 2.5 tenths, about a quarter second over Terry Crouch. And that pulls an extra gap, of course, to Aldous Puchiklis, Andrew Slizens, and everybody else. as they sit in qualifying. Crystal Theis, the fastest amateur driver so far in car 008, and this very much, I think, meeting our expectations as he leads the amateur standings, has been, I think, the top amateur driver this season, just needs to keep things clean and keep the results coming, as there we go, Terry Crouch fires back into turn 1 with a new fast lap time by, again, nearly a quarter of a second. They just keep picking up more and more time as Reinhardt, looks like, comes through the hairpin at turn 5, now down through Revolver. And Josh, Reinhardt looks good.
Oh yeah, he looks good. This is going to be quite a battle. Look at that. Otis Puclis with 123.581. Just beating Ryan Hebo by 6 thousandths of a second. This top 3, even Randall White, and the top 4 actually, this is going to be a pretty good battle to watch the race today.
Absolutely. We've got the top 4 rather, within 1 second of each other, and Andrew Slissen's not far back. In fact, if you counted from Oldest Puticlus down a second back, you would actually get back to Crystal Theis nearly by 6/1000ths of a second. So that's 7 cars within 1 second in pace so far in qualifying. Very tight field at the top. Here's Nicholas Batista, currently the slowest, and actually Crystal Theis picks up a chunk of change, up to a 1:24.358, just over 1 second off a pole overall. That is rather quick for an amateur driver here, Gary. He has got something going for him today.
He's only now the only driver in the top 10, which are all pro drivers, and that is, I feel like I've seen this before. Stop me if I'm wrong here, but we literally just saw this last week with the NARL Porsche Pro and Pro-Am classes last week with their finishing results. I'm seeing a bit of a pattern here, and I love this. I love that.
This is definitely kind of the way things go with a Pro and Am field that's all in the same car. We see that in the North American Racing League on Thursday evenings on Pit Stop TV. Glad they've restarted their season. Let's go through some more of the field there as you see Terry Crouch go even faster that last lap. We saw Nicholas Batista. Wouter Van Mariek back here in car 668 is 21st quick so far. Brandon Carl in pit lane. We talked to him last week after a stellar run at Bathurst. Here's Christian Clark in car 72. I believe missed last week or was involved in a crash. I don't recall which. Unfortunately, not a great way either way to have Bathurst go. Hopefully he can turn things around. I know, though, that Dustin Oberlo was not in the field, and we certainly missed the 88 car in Australia last week. Hopefully he can turn things around to pick up some points here today in Japan. Here's Ed Sancinelli in car 57 over at Frito Sport, and that was a near miss. Went back onto the circuit from pit lane. Dan Clark in car 114 was actually the car he missed, and Callum McLeod, maybe the fastest in outright pace in amateur overall this season, really needs to put a race together. I think should be in victory lane a couple of times over at this point, but I still say that Schultheis has been the best amateur driver because he has been the most well-rounded of our amateur field. And Josh, I think Callum really just needs to pull the reins back a little bit, maybe sacrifice a little pace to make sure he makes it to the checkers in one piece.
Yeah, sometimes you want to get there to the end. Other times, you just gotta really pick up the pace. But with Callum, I think it's more of a balancing act. Not pick up too much pace, but not lose too much of it either. But also be consistent. Okayama is a very flowy kind of track, and consistency at this place is gonna net you pretty big positive spots here. So you be consistent, this track's going to reward you. If not, you're gonna have probably a tough time around here.
Here's a look at Oxen Zoller in car 75 for James May Racing. Wilder, by the way, picked up a bunch of time, up to his 14th quick now. Looking great for that in Gulf, number 648, as Dan Clark gets faster in the 114 as well. And at the top of the board, Reinhardt Heibel. Boy, is that timing. I was just about to call Terry Crouch our pole sitter, and then Reinhardt comes in with a heater and goes up by 6/100ths of a second over Terry Crouch. And Terry has an opportunity here to fire back, but he's in turn 2. Ooh, he might not get the opportunity, actually.
He might make it. He does have time. He does.
Do we know if checkers flew
left
on that time, though?
He's still going like it hasn't, so we'll see.
I see a minute and a half on my clock, so...
Yeah, time was
Let's see.
extended. I'm concerned if he was already given the checkered flag potentially. If he might not have a chance to fire back, Aldous Budaklis off track, he will not have a chance to go any faster as he chimes in at 1,000ths of a second so far, faster than Randall White, who calls his run a done, I guess. Your top 4, though, within a half second. That is staggering as we take a look at Terry Crouch into Redmond here in turn number 8. Looking through the rest
He did make it after.
Oh, so after the checkers. So this might not count.
No, well, before the checker, sorry.
Okay, so this will count then
Sure
for Terry Crouch. Yeah, this will count then for the 59 car. We'll see what he can do as Reinhardt has pulled off track. Terry Crouch, one more chance to go for pole. Runs out wide at a turn 11. It should still be okay. To the line. Oh, he might have just picked it up. Yes, pole by 1,000ths of a second for Terry Crouch.
And still hasn't broken into the 122 barrier, but wow, Josh, what a run that was for Terry.
I've never seen such. I've seen some of it, but this back and forth battle between Terry and Reinhardt. It's like I'm watching a rivalry.
The gift that keeps on giving.
Here. Yeah.
Well, as I mentioned, we had a couple of guests in the booth this afternoon. Last week was Solo at Bathurst. The weeks prior, we had a fantastic fill-in for a few weeks. Glad he was here, but unfortunately, Justin Prince no longer with us at Pitstop TV. But hey, Gary Weaver, Joshua Peterson on the call today. Glad to have you both here. Gary, you're pretty much almost in the crew at this point. I mean, you are one of us at this point, part of the ship, part of the crew. For Joshua, first time here at Pitstop TV, how are things going so far?
Oh, it's going pretty well. The first time I've actually been back in the commentary booth with with recent commentary company, I would say, production team. I was with another one for some time, but now I'm here.
Well, we're glad to have you today as a guest host for this afternoon's event at Okayama. You can see the field getting ready on that short stretch from turn 7 at Piper to turn 8 at Redmond. Love the corner names here, by the way. Piper to Redmond, turn 7 to turn 8. Love those names. Revolver for turn 6. A lot of fun. But let's go ahead and meet our starting grid. And, well, here's your top 10 on track. Car 59 just so fast. 1,000ths of a second. Terry Crouch will start from pole today at Okayama International Circuit. Reinhard Heibel just beat out in the closing moments there of qualifying. Will start from second place. Aldous Budaklis will start from third in car 667. Randall White from fourth. Starting fifth, it's Andrew Slizens in car 99. David Payne will grid up in the sixth position. In row 4, we got Pete Snake and Sean Cole. And row 5, you finally get your amateur front row. And we didn't even get to mention Ola Sarnquist nabbed pole over Chris Schultheis in the closing moments as well. Car 13 looking quick today as car 008 will have to pass Ola Sarnquist for the amateur win. Gary, the next 10 on the docket.
Yeah, starting in 11th, that's going to be the amateur driver of Ken Estep. He's going to round out the podium for the amateur class. James Dowling will start off in the 12th place position. And then it's another amateur pro row with Dan Clark and starting in lucky position number 13 in that 114. And the 242 of David Clymer will start 14th. 15th place is going to be Wooter in the 668. 16th, there we go, in the 75 is going to be, I just saw his name pronunciation. Help me out here, Andrew.
Oxenzoller.
Oxenzoller, that's what it is. All right, just have to say it out loud. He starts in 16th. Colin McLeod, 17th. 18th is going to be that number 57 of Ed, I believe, Chanelli. Sanchinelli, I was close. And then Dustin Oberlaw will start 19th, with the 20th position being rounded out by Christian Clark.
And then we finish it off with Brandon Carl in 21st, Nicholas Batista in 22nd, and Mike Neekum in 23rd. Pace car heads off.
A bit of a moment, by the way, in under pacing. We just saw a collision between Christian Clark and Ed Sanchinelli. Hopefully, nothing too big. We'll follow up with that in a moment. But we do have the green flag awaiting. You can see it there in Barney's hand. And down the long front stretch here at Okayama, green flag will fly. 60 minutes. Let's go. Looks like Christian Clark has pulled well back of the field, but will continue on in this race. Everybody's still on track as we fire down to Atwood for the first time. Slizzens and Cole battling. Now Pete Snake going to fire up the inside of the number 39 for the 7th position as Crystal Theis and Ola Sarnquist battle for the amateur lead. Oxenzoller off track in turn 4 and hits the inside wall ever so slightly. Problems there as we take a look at your amateur race lead battle to the hairpin for the first time. Sarnquist way up top on the outside, and one car spinning. It's Sean Cole.
That's not the most ideal way for some of these drivers to start off, but luckily it looks to be relatively minor contact, so everything should be, for the most part, okay. But Josh, a very wild first half lap here at Okayama.
And you're telling me, oh, and I got another car in the wide there too. That was Ola. So yeah, the first lap, everyone's trying to get to the front, but I was trying to stay safe, but trying to pass, it's really complicated to begin, but once it pans out, it gets more simple.
Here's a pit stop, lap 1. James Dowling into the pit lane in car 34, position 16, 17, 18, 19, rolling on down, but he was up at the top 5 or so when he had to come down into the pits. I wonder if this is a fuel issue. Potentially for Dowling, maybe he didn't fill up with race fuel in the 34 car. Taking tires like that might have been a mistake, but problems for James Dowling nonetheless. Out front, Reinhard Heibel has definitely closed up ever so slightly in the last few corners to Terry Crouch. We'll see if he's able to challenge early on in this race as the entire field works up out of Atwood onto the back stretch. Now, I mentioned on the pace lap, Christian Clark contact at the back end of the 57. Very light damage, if any, for the number 72. That's what you like to see, especially when you have kind of contact before the green flag even starts. You don't want to see much damage. It's a different story, I'd imagine, for Sancinelli, as he's got to have some rear-end damage out of all of that. And yes, in fact, he does. It was definitely solid contact between those two, as Sancinelli works up to Redmond here for only the second time. Even some floor pan damage there on the right side. Before we go too far, though, of things we want to hit. The race details for today's event. 60-minute race, of course, as we saw and are already counting down from. A 31% fuel limit. 2 pits are expected today. This is open setup, and we do have incident penalties at 15 incidents, and I believe beyond that we get 1 or 2 as well. As Reinhardt goes quickest that last lap, he's closing in for the race lead. A couple of keys to today's race. Of course, cold tires, easy start. We saw that already take effect on some drivers. We saw Oxenzoller around out of Atwood the last time. Mind the brakes, no ABS. Got to be careful into those hard braking zones that Gary talked about towards the top of the show. Race the track. Don't race the competitors too much. Race the track first, and then as we get later into this race, by all means, race your battles as you need to, and of course, save fuel. That has become the big talking point of this season, as we're on lap number 3. Already, I'm sure these guys are saving fuel, and Gary, I'd imagine that you see Reinhard stay behind Terry a little more than you might expect just to save that fuel and leapfrog him in the pit lane.
I was going to bring that up too. I haven't seen Reinhard while he set the fastest lap. He hasn't really made too much of a push to get by Terry Crouch as we ride on board here. So this is going to be a fantastic idea, really, to do a bit of pit strategy play and just sit behind, sit in the draft, save that fuel, maybe extend the braking zones a little bit, extend the coasting as well, coast a little bit more, just so you can get that bit farther.
On board with Reinhard Heibel to turn 1. And look at that, Terry Crouch fires back, purple lap time there. And it looks like the opening sector a little weaker there for Reinhardt. Those are 2 very downforce-dependent corners, Josh, and it seems like the aero wake will certainly be a point of issue maybe for following cars today. Just not able to get that front grip, not able to really stick to the line you want to.
Exactly. It's the part of the track the downforce is a key factor in it, and being behind somebody's draft, it'll be slipstream. It really makes the car go faster, gives you more downforce, gives you better turning ability, and it really helps out the aerodynamics.
A little over 5 minutes into the race, and there are some battles popping up throughout the course of the field. Here's Ed Sancinelli and Dan Clark, Colin McLeod. These guys are a little spread apart, but you can see Sean Cole back there. Sean should have the pace to race back up through these guys and promote a few battles as well. You also see David Clymer not far back from Chris Schultheis, who is leading in amateur, and I believe, yeah, as Josh mentioned, Ola Sarnquist, an issue at the start of the race. The first couple of laps, he has got some nose damage. As you see Terry go even faster. What do you say we go back and try to find the issue here for Ola Sarnquist? It was a couple of laps ago. And see if we can find the exact moment. It's going to be a little tough. Might have been the lap prior, so we'll go back one more time. So looking like maybe it was lap 2, potentially. Well, here's the start of the race. We'll just follow along from Ola's perspective as he raced with Chris Schultheis for the amateur lead. And Josh, it sounds like you found it. You saw it, or something at least when it happened. What are we looking for here?
Oh, we're looking to see how the contact began. You know, contact just happens at any point during the race from any side of the car. As we see nothing.
This is all lap 1. That was Atwood for the first time, and that's where Schultheis, we saw them kind of cross back. You see Oaks all in the background. Schultheis kind of crossed back over, got the run on the backstretch. Clymer trailing was right behind, and yes, there was that issue.
We saw that too as that happened.
We did.
I didn't think it would have been that much damage.
Me either, and that really put him back here. That put him behind Colin McLeod, Sean Cole. I thought there was one more issue, because at this point, Sean Cole was quite a ways behind Ola. I thought there would have been one more issue. He was slow there in turn 8. Interesting. It seems like that might have been all it was for Ola Sarnquist. It seemed like, I don't know, it just felt like there was going to be more there on that opening lap, and I guess opening issue for Ola Sarnquist, but it seems like it has kind of died down since then. Meanwhile, there was just a change of position on the racetrack as David Clymer has gone on by AM leader Chris Schultheis, and this now means that Dan Clark is just behind Schultheis for the amateur top 2. And Gary, while you weren't in a multi-class setting, you did get to observe it for the first time in the North American Racing League this past Thursday, and we've seen these AM guys really go at it when they get the slight opportunity, rare opportunity to battle without pro guys around them. You got to take them while you can get them.
Yeah, those overall positions, at least in, especially in, they have a very interesting format for NARLs, that all positions are pretty much equally the same. So it's as if you're racing overall for position, but even if you're multi-class, it would mean that, it's a very weird way to explain. Basically, all overall points count for each and every class. So if, say, an amateur driver finished 7th and 9th, they're not going to be finishing 1st and 2nd on the championship standings, essentially. They're not going to be earning the equivalent of 1st and 2nd place points. They're going to be earning those 7th place points and those 9th place points, which will then, of course, sort itself out over time. So it's a very interesting dynamic here, having to race 2 classes at the same time, but in the same car. And that's something that just, again, that I even brought up with NARL, is that it's fascinating because usually you see it in a slower or faster car with different classes. Here, you're in the same car. You just have to maximize what you have underneath you.
Yeah, the key difference between this format and the format we see on Thursday is with the NARL is, these guys race just amongst themselves for points. That way you can earn max points in amateur for the class. On Thursdays with those Porsche Cup cars now, they race for overall positions to earn points. I'm not sure which I like better. I think both have their strengths and downfalls for sure, strengths and weaknesses, if you will, as Clymer locks up big time through turn 8 right there, and you see Schultheis kind of moved around as a result, might have been trying to take advantage of it, couldn't do so, and now Dan Clark closes in a little bit. But Josh, of course, you've been able to see this season and plenty of seasons kind of take place in the Simpit. What do you think?
I think it's going to be a good 3-car battle right here for number laps before we get to the first round of pit stops.
Well, which points format do you prefer? Do you prefer racing for overall position between classes, or having their own point spread?
I think I prefer having their own point spread. It just, I think it makes it a bit more fair. You got pro and amateur, so the amateur guys getting the same position as like, not position, but points as you would as in that's how it is in the standings. I don't really find that fair. If you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's interesting when a pro guy is able to race an amateur guy for an extra couple of points, as we see the amateur lead fight on screen currently. Schultheis having to give way to Dan Klar. Klar is on something today, a good something, as he shows some speed and some muscle getting on by Chris Schultheis for the amateur race lead. Big time change up here at amateur. Gary, I'm going to pose the same question to you. Which do you prefer between the two? Where I guess as we watch this kind of battle unfold, and really the whole format unfold as well as far as standings.
Oh man, that's a hard question, because
it is.
Like, I'm gonna take a cop out here and go with Joshua. Is that he said the same thing that pretty much all I said. Both have their strengths, both have their weaknesses. Just based on intrigue alone, as let's say that 57 might get passed by Sean Cole here in just a couple moments. We'll see. But in terms of the intrigue alone, I like the overall position with multi-class, as Sean Cole is going to be bearing down right on the gearbox here. This is a fantastic onboard shot just to see how close these drivers get. But in terms of I know it's in a sense it'd be kind of unfair if, say, an amateur driver finished in 5th and then the second place amateur driver finished in 10th. Well, then you wonder, well, why can't that amateur driver be scored as the exact same, essentially? You know, why can't we all have the same point spread? Because if they're that much faster, then why aren't they just in the pro class in the first place? And then you have all that. It's a bit weird, but if enough drivers agree to it and understand how the format is run, and if there's any catches for anything unseen, then I think it would work out pretty well.
As I mentioned, I think, first of all, that there's definitely benefits and drawbacks to each one, as Sean Cole and Ed Sancinelli here work for the 11th position. Sean Cole on the offensive. And we're certainly going to see an interesting little battle take place once Sean's able to get a good position here on Ed. And I think he might have just found it. And sure enough, he's going to try and go right on by here into turn 1. Trying to pull up Sean's stream as well. He is streaming on the Simpit live channel. Trying to see if I can pull that up here before too long. And we should be able to if you just give me one moment. Love live TV. These are the kind of things that happen sometimes. But I definitely will side with kind of the general consensus so far that I really enjoy these guys being able to fight for their own positions and not have to, I guess, points. Not have to fight with amateur guys. Sorry, for pro guys. Not have to fight with pro guys. There we go. For amateur points in the race. Let's bring up Sean's stream now, as we were just on board with him for that pass on Ed Sancinelli. And you can see Sean right now in 11th position, just following Chris Schultheis, waiting for an opportunity to pass, and this will not hurt Chris in the points. So while we do talk up the North American Race League on Thursdays, you guys in the Simpit Radical Series, in my opinion, have a bit of a leg up. I really enjoy this format where, you know, Chris can, I think, play nicely with the pro guy right behind him, let the pro guy go by, and it's not going to hurt him aside from time on the racetrack. It will not take points. For his total is,
no.
Sancinelli around. But hey, that's a decent, just got into the barrier there. It was a decent little catch until that moment, as David Payne has trouble out of the final corner.
So close for Sancinelli. He almost had that. He just let go of the brake a bit too soon, and I can entirely understand that, because you just want to get going as fast as possible, but he was just in the grass. But man, two moments there in the second half of this track.
Here's the onboard first for Sancinelli, and then we'll go over to David Payne. But Josh, just we're talking about all these standings and everything, and Sean Cole going on by Sancinelli. A big moment here for Ed.
Oh yeah, it definitely is. It probably put him a better point. Give a points payout. Now I'm going to the Dave Payne rig, and I see a little bit of neck code on that, and even Andre Sosen's got involved in that too.
Yep, just buzzed the rears there, did Ed, and right there, just throttles back up, swings the rear around, and gets into the inside wall, unfortunately. Then David Payne has a moment out of turn 11, which is certainly worth going back and seeing, as he was just ahead of Andrus Slizens. And this also now allows Pete Snake and Clymer to go on by Slizens for the 5th and 6th spots. That moves Andrus down to 7th as Reinhard Heibel goes fastest on the racetrack that time in Terry Crouch's wake. Here's the moment for David Payne out of turn 11, loose on his own, but Andrus gets a piece of him.
Yep.
Oh!
Ooh.
That was close for Pete.
Oh, it was. I actually even saw a bit of Necco, but it was just those 2 cars. But Pete was real close.
We get the view from Pete Snake's on board here. And for Pete's sake, this was close for Pete Snake. Look, I'm a dad now. I gotta make those kinds of jokes.
That is true.
Oh!
Oh, yeah, look
you
at
see
that.
the wheel, too.
That was
He's
very
thinking, oh,
close.
nope, I have to go the other way. That's fantastic awareness.
I haven't mentioned Pete Snake at all yet today, aside from that moment there. And the Get Pole Racing driver, teammates with Reinhard Heibel, who's been so fast this season, has really been sensational. Just has had a couple of moments. I think back to Zandvoort, where Pete, unfortunately, I believe, ended up upside down. Just small moments this season where it's really taken away from his season total in the standings. Otherwise, I think he really could be up there with Randall White and in a really good spot. And I think he's still in a decent position. I mean, he's 3rd, only 10 or so points behind Randall, but I think really could be 2nd if a couple of things had gone a little bit differently, as Clymer now sorts into 6th. Also worth mentioning, he has been good this season, just not maybe good enough. At this point, though, pit stops are looming for the first time. We've seen James Dowling already in the pit lane, albeit unscheduled. And Gary, in this position, do you want to pit first or do you want to pit last? Do you want to run this out as far as you can? What do you want to do here?
At this point, since it's the opening portion of the race still, I'd run this as far as I can, just to ensure that I'd at least, be able to finish the race just in any position whatsoever, quite literally and quite figuratively, because I'd rather not misjudge the pit stops and the fuel and everything, only to find out, especially early on. I'd rather not make an aggressive call early on and be, okay, well, let's see if I can undercut, and then, next thing you know, at the end of the race, you're about 3 minutes of fuel too short.
Just watching on here as our leaders continue around the racetrack. This will complete lap number 13 this time by as they barrel down the front stretch. And Reinhard had gotten a lot closer the last couple of laps. I wonder if it'd be beneficial for Terry maybe to drive away from Reinhard a little bit as you see the sun setting behind us. Land of the rising sun racing in the evening, but as Terry gets real loose that time out of turn 2. That really negated everything. Here comes Reinhard to run to Atwood. Not going to be able to get there for position, but this is really going to open up the box. And since we've got pit stops looming, could be worth for Reinhard to consider passing the 59 car if he's able, and taking over the race lead, then pitting. We'll see.
Yeah, he's literally in Terry's slipstream right now. And for pitting, let's see who B2 off pit road for the race. Pit road.
Problem, Sean Cole around. Yeah, let's see if we can get some of the, capture of the moment when it happened. Well, there it is on screen. This seems like it might have been...
That's turn 3.
Yeah.
Just before the S's.
I guess that's when he had already wadded the car up, but he's got a lot more damage I thought than he already had. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe it was just a simple slide around, but you can kind of see it there at the bottom right of the broadcast. We can make that window a little larger. But problems for the leader of the Simpit.
I'm kind of jealous that he's able to have 2 PCs there. That's the only thing I can think of there. Is he has 2 PCs since he has an external view there. So I'm jealous. I wish I could have that. But that's amazing. It does help with the experience, though. That's great. Giving all the information possible, internal view, external view. You have just everything going on there.
We'll have to see if we can get him some Whiplash sim cams for his external PC, external view there on his stream. But Sean
It does
Cole,
look like a lot more damage than before, yeah.
yeah, it looks like he's hit something. Of course, he got hit in the door by Olaf Sarnquist earlier, but it really looks like it's been added. Let's take the replay and at least see if anything else happened.
Oh, I do see. So it's a lot more than just a spin.
Incident.
It did start pretty much at the exit of turn 1. It's a lot more than just a simple spin.
And he hit the inside tire wall there, and then he kept going. I was very outside there at turn 2.
So here's the replay. Oh, and there was even a wide moment here for Dan Clark as he's lost the amateur lead. We missed that. David Payne got in the back of Sean Cole. A lot went on, apparently, while we were checking into the race leaders. So Sean Cole goes in, slides around a little bit behind Dan Clark. David Payne is sitting right behind these guys. And Schultheis is back on through for the amateur lead. Here's the moment in turn 1 you guys were talking about.
So honestly, it doesn't get until the grass comes down into the braking zone, clips the curb, and then on corner exit, just a bit too much power and tire wall.
Yep, tire wall, and then goes for a little bit, and then rejoins the track, around he goes.
That could have been a lot worse, to be fair.
Oh yeah, a lot worse. I'm glad it wasn't.
So we really just missed it. Thankfully, nothing too bad for Sean Cole. He's got a lot of damage, but it could be a whole lot worse. Could have been flipped over as he has a move here on Ed Sancinelli for the 12th position overall as we come back live. And Sean Cole back on through. I'm sure Ed is getting tired of seeing that blue and yellow and white 39 go back on by. But Ed just trying to keep things a bit more slowly paced and clean. And I like that. I like when a driver does that. Realizes where maybe they don't have as much pace as somebody who keeps going by them, then having a mistake and sliding back behind them, then passing them again. At some point, that's going to work out for Ed. .38 minutes to go and counting. Callum McLeod in the pit lane in car 69, and he will drop down off the jacks, did take tires. And there he goes. So a quick stop for Callum right at the 22-second mark we usually expect. And here's a look for David Clymer as he works on Pete Snake. And Gary, this could be a rather interesting battle right at the cutoff of the top 5. In fact, battling for 5th. This could be rather fun as the race goes on.
And Schultheis goes into pit road before Dan Clark. That is a very interesting call. So I think Schultheis is going to be trying to do an undercut, essentially.
Might not have saved enough fuel. I think the move is certainly to overcut, at least in the first stop. And I think we've seen that be proven this season. You want to go deeper if you can, Josh. You want to run as long as you can on the racetrack, have a lighter race car to put fuel into. And here we go, Schultheis back on the racetrack. 18.52 seconds.
Yeah, it's actually strategy. Do you pit now, or do you go a couple more times, Billy? Oh, we got another wreck. Oh boy.
Let's go back to the race keys. Cold tires, easy start. That applies as well off the pit lane. Cold tires. Got to be careful.
Yes, indeed. But
Callum McLeod, fresh off the pit lane.
Yeah, but do you pit now, pit a bit earlier, or do you pit later? It's basically strategy. Which tires do you take? The left, the right, all fours? Do you repair some damage along the way?
So I believe we've got the option. Believe we've got the option to go for front or rear tires now with this car, and we actually saw that last week at Bathurst. Brandon Carl ended up taking front tires, I believe. It didn't work out. He ended up having cold tires in the front of the car and just couldn't get them to grip upright. But it's an option. If there is one track somewhere on the schedule that just really roasts either the fronts or the rears, it is a possibility. But for the most part, we'll see these guys kind of fall into the adopted strategy of tires at the first stop, somewhere around now, take fuel, and get tires, skip tires again later at their second stop for fuel. Of course, this 31% fuel limit has opened up the box as Nicholas Batista very slow into the pit lane. 30 miles per hour. I believe the pit limit is 37, so he might want to review that.
unless he just ran out of fuel. Not exactly hearing much from his car.
Oberlo, problems
That's
there. I think
interesting.
turn 4.
Yeah, it's just before, well, pretty much at the entry to the long back straightaway.
Here we go. Race leaders are in the same lap. Terry Crouch, Reinhard Heibel. Oldest Pudiclis comes in, and you see him coming in with Randall White closely behind. So your top 4 all in the pit lane at once. Andrus Slizens continues on. He is teammate, by the way, to Oldest Pudiclis over at Kingsman Racing. As Batista exits at the same time, there is Crouch, who beats Reinhard Heibel back onto the racetrack. Very similar times. Oldest Pudiclis still waiting on rear tires. Drops down off the jacks. There he goes, 20.23 seconds. Randall White ever so slightly longer. Pete Snake waiting to drop down off of the rear jacks. As you see David Payne come in. Ola Sarnquist, Sean Cole. I see Dan Clark back there. I see David Clymer going to exit right with Pete Snake and cuts Pete a break. I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, especially on pit exit. It's not the, I don't know. We'll see.
Here comes Dan Clark onto the racetrack. And car 114, there goes David Payne along with Ola Sarnquist. Sean Cole will be exiting shortly. There he goes. He's narrowly, it looks like, going to exit right next to Ed Santinelli, and Ed gives him a break. Again, don't know if I would have done that, but hey, these guys being respectful. I do love that about the Simpit Radical series. These guys all very respectful of one another. As Wouter Van Mariek works back onto the racetrack. There's Dustin Oberlo in the Inca number 88. Brandon Carl on the racetrack. Just waiting on the pit here from Andrus Slizens. Here he comes.
So we'll see how things go pretty much after most of the entire field had gone to pit road. This is the part where, well, I would say you start to look at the leader and see where he is, but he's literally just passing Slizens about now. So that question is already answered for us.
And Terry Crouch has opened up a gap on Reinhard Heibel. Better on cold tires, it looks like. Another second or so. As we watch Slizens' pit stop take place. And it's interesting to me that he went that extra lap, Josh. He was in that small incident with David Payne earlier and was somewhere about the 7th position, where I think he'll work out to after this. Actually, he'll be right in front of Pete Snake and David Clymer. Very interesting.
Yeah. I think he thought he could just get away by pitting like a lap later than some of the other guys.
It worked out as Alkson Zoller, I believe, at a turn 4. It is at a turn. No, that was into. Oh, that's into turn 10. That was over in Mike Knight, and he drops down to the 17th spot. One car yet to pit. Here he comes, Brandon Carl, car 77.
Right towards the line, and of course a great job by slowing down before you enter pit lane. And of course, I said that loud, it's a no duh kind of thing, but especially when pushing on pit entry, you have to be really, really careful, no matter what, especially with how the pit entry lane works at some tracks on the racing service, and especially here at Okayama. You have to be quite careful. You can push, but you don't want to clip the grass or the walls, of course, so it's better to be careful than to risk pretty much ending your race early.
Definitely a balance. Let's recap a couple of battles as we've worked back onto the racetrack with our pro class up front. David Clymer chasing down Pete Snake still. This battle has not changed really at all, except they now have Andrus Slizens just 1 second ahead of Pete Snake. So we could have a 3-car fight between Slizens in the 99, Pete Snake in the 666, and David Clymer in the 242. Further ahead, though, Reinhard Heibel now 1.7 seconds behind Terry Crouch, and I think Reinhard is starting to really show his driving chops, starting to try and take chunks out of that race lead. And for his race, I mean, yes, he might have to, because then he can draft and save fuel, but he's going to burn fuel getting there.
We'll see. That's just fascinating because Reinhard was sitting directly behind Terry Crouch for pretty much the entire opening section of that race until the pit stops, and then, well, here we are with them about 1.8 seconds between them.
We'd have to go review the pit in, but something tells me that Reinhard may have made a mistake on entry and given up a couple of tenths there, maybe a full second or so. We've seen a lot of drivers really easy into the pit lane. You can actually push quite late in the pit lane. If you haven't done it before, if you're going off of your instinct, you might slow up a lot earlier than you actually need to. As here's David Clymer on Pete Snake for the 6th position. I think that might be what's catching some of these guys out and losing them time in the pits. And quite frankly, if Pete was careful as well, teammates with Reinhard Heidel, if Pete was also careful, that could have slowed up David Clymer. That could be why they've lost this spot, these 2 spots, actually, to Andrew Slizens following the incident with David Payne. We could have a whole full circle explanation here as Chris Fights, by the way, is right behind these guys. He made up a few seconds in the pit lane. I wonder if one of you might be able to go back and review, see if Krish actually took tires or not. My instinct would tell me no, based on the fact that he's got such a shorter pit time, 18.52 seconds. That's got to be a no.
I'm actually looking back at Reinhardt's pit entry. It looks like that they entered and exited at about the same time. I think Terry just got has quite literally and figuratively better grip on the cold tires and more understanding of that. So he got away a lot faster. He did have a clear track. Reinhardt did have to deal with Batista a little bit on exit, but it didn't really slow him down that much, I don't think. So it's very, very interesting that Terry had a much better pit out, essentially.
Watching David Clymer still work with Pete Snake. Interesting report there, as we got a few lap cars right ahead of these guys. Nicholas Batista, I see Brandon Carl in that group, I see Christian Clark. They are all 3 in order, actually at the bottom of the grid, bottom of the order. And there we go, finally 1 lap down to these guys. Goes Christian Clark. As we do have 6 cars 1 lap down. Dustin Oberlo in position 18. Mike Nickham in position 19, who we spoke to last week, had a great run at Bathurst. Not so much today here at Okayama. Then James Dowling, who had a big issue early. Still not sure what happened. I'd imagine it was a lack of fuel at the start of the race. He's already had the pit twice. Nicholas Batista is in 21st. We just saw him go a lap down to those drivers battling for 5th. Then Brandon Carl right behind in 22nd, and Christian Clark just behind those guys in 23rd position in car 72. So, as we've gone on past halfway, we're going to go Pit Stop TV side by side for just a few brief moments. We'll be right back in just a few. Welcome back to the virtual Okayama International Circuit in Mimasaka, Japan. We have just seen some drama unfold in the midfield, most particularly with our amateur race leader, or at least was our amateur race leader. Chris Schultheis just spun in Revolver, gave up the amateur lead to Dan Klar. We were going to come back and recap the fact that Chris Schultheis had an 11-second race lead. That has obviously changed, as now Dan Klar has some 2.3 seconds or so back to Ola Sarnquist, who now runs in the second position in amateur. David Payne now runs 10th overall, Schultheis 11th. But we also saw a moment for Pete Snake, so we're going to go back, get a couple of replays. We have a lot to talk about here, guys, as we come back from that quick side-by-side break. Gary, a lot unfolding very suddenly.
Yeah, of course, the one time where we thought, yeah, we have a little bit of time, and then the second we step away, pretty much everything happens, and that is Schultheis just spinning. That was in front of Batista. Very good job by Schultheis to recognize where he is on the track, and instead of trying to do a whole U-turn on the actual track and being offline and risking coming in front of somebody, he instead reverses off the track and then gets going, but because of that, he did lose that lead that he had in the amateur class.
Take the onboard here with Schultheis and take a look at it. Josh, what do you see here?
I see it. You just lost it right at that corner. But in Batista, man, he almost got the. Jeez, he almost hit him.
Great heads-up moment, by the way, as Gary mentioned, from Schultheis to recognize the situation, back up off the racetrack, you get himself sorted, get back on. Really enjoy when a driver makes a quality rejoin like that, so hats off to Schultheis in that moment. Here's Pete Snake's issue. This is down in Redmond, turn 8, very similar. The rear end just comes around. Tires are warming up, tires are wearing out, and Gary, I think we're seeing it all come to a precipice.
I think at this point, this is where you start to recognize that it's not entirely over. A lot is able to happen, and this is one of those things where you just can't push the car too hard. It will very much still step out, that is for sure.
As we touched on briefly before we even started the broadcast, pretty warm day in virtual Mimasaka, Japan. 83.5 degrees in the air, and that's Fahrenheit, of course. 87 degrees on track. It's actually come down a little bit since we started the broadcast, but it's still rather warm out there, and I do believe Schultheis was one of the few drivers who did not take tires that opening stop to try and make up some time, and now it looks like it's maybe come back around to bite him potentially. Very short pit stop, 18.5 seconds compared to the usual 21 seconds for a full 4-tire stop. It's only a second difference between fuel and tires, so it does look like Schultheis tried to underfuel a little bit, not take tires, and it's come around to bite him. That said, it's given David Payne a new life inside the top 10 as he chases down Ola Sarnquist, who is now second in amateur competition. And that's always nice as a driver, Gary, where you have a moment early, get turned around, whatever happens, and then suddenly you're back in it.
It's pretty good. I'm very surprised, especially considering the amount of damage on the back of Payne's, entire car, let's be honest. I think the only normal thing about the back of the car is, I don't know, the tires, maybe, at this point. Maybe a bit of the right rear fender, just about, but that's still good for David Payne. It's moments like these where you just have to run with that damage and see how it goes. If it drives fine, if it's not spinning out every single corner, then yeah, keep going and see where you can end up. It's not worth just ending the day early, because you never know if you'd be able to make it to the end or not if you don't at least give it an attempt.
Oxenzoller off in turn 2. Right back on. No, that was Redmond. They look very similar. A couple of corners in this racetrack look very similar. That very much looked like turn 2. That was turn 8. As he slides in behind Callum McLeod now in the number 69. Callum running 15th. Has had really good pace this season. Just not with it today, it seems. And I always wonder about drivers, and maybe Josh, you know a little more about this. It seems like we definitely see the club and location, localities, if you will, really have an influence on who's good at certain tracks in some instances. In this instance, I'd say Callum probably has better experience with courses like Alton Park, Brands Hatch. even just some of the more internationally renowned circuits, I should say, like Spa, Barcelona, and some of those others we've gone to, even Bathurst last week. But this is kind of a hole-in-the-wall circuit in some ways. Yes, it's a free circuit that a lot of drivers have to go through in rookie class, but once you go past rookie class, there's very, very few interactions that you really have in official racing with Okayama International Circuit on the iRacing.com sim, aside from leagues like this that want to utilize it as a free round. So Callum may not have much experience here at Okayama. This car combination here as well, a little bit out of the box, might just be a situation where he's a little bit less experienced, a little less comfortable, and his speed doesn't really show here today.
Yeah, the clubs on iRacing, the 30-something clubs.
Oh, no!
Oh, Oxenzola.
Oh,
man.
Oh, I was talking too. Oh, man.
And here comes Wouter Van Mariek. Who's had a quiet day, by the way. Looked great in qualifying and has done a great job of just keeping the car clean. Hats off to this driver. Wouter has, I think, really impressed today just as far as keeping the car clean. Might have a slowdown here on the front stretch. Let's Oxenzola go back by, but I'm very impressed. Actually, let's Oldest Putuklis go through, who was third place. So that shows that Wouter is loud, but very clean race. Doesn't have a mark on the race car. Really solid day for Wouter, especially to come back from a couple of really troublesome rounds at Spain and Australia last week. Up front, Terry Crouch, 16 minutes to go and some change, and a pit stop looming. And it's looking good. I mean, this is a big-time turnaround this season when we've seen Reinhardt and Terry on track at the same time. For the most part, it's been heartbreak for Terry Crouch and success, great success for Reinhard Heibel. But this, trying to navigate Christian Clark for the second time. Terry Crouch finally gets by the 72 car. But I've really enjoyed watching Terry in the background just kind of have a clean race. A non, I guess, exciting day is a good day in this sense. He's led every single lap so far, I do believe, aside from the one that Slizzens led while staying out. And Gary, this is a big-time turnaround, maybe what he needs.
I was going to bring up as well the fact that the distance between both Crouch and Reinhardt have basically just been the exact same. They've been trading lap times throughout. Last time by the start-finish, it was about 0.2 of a second faster from Reinhardt to Terry, so maybe Reinhardt has finally found a little bit of pace. He's finally gotten a handle on the car now that they're a few laps into the run. But at the same time, with one stop left, we'll see. Those tires could definitely hold up to the end, but it's a matter of just making sure that you fuel up enough to make it to the end in the first place.
And Josh, I think you'll agree here, Reinhardt has just been the best driver, the fastest on the racetrack, has put the races together the best. Terry's had a couple of bad luck moments, and when we've seen Reinhardt on track, he has gone to victory lane. That's just a fact that we have seen. I'm very surprised today that Reinhardt is not out here just walking away from the 59, but you see now a lap car, Kenneth Stepp holding up the 59 ever so slightly, and plays much more nicely for the 777 there, nearly making contact at the apex as Terry goes a bit wide into turn 11. Suddenly, everything does work against Terry Crouch.
Reinhardt seems to be quite a very confident driver for today. He knows the car. So does Terry. But Reinhardt right now is faster lap-wise than Terry right now. But can Reinhardt catch Terry while they're out on the track? Can he catch it to Terry, pass him on the race off the second round of pit stops? That's a move right there. That man is probably thinking right now.
Neither one of these drivers is able to save fuel off of the other, so it's a matter of just managing their own race independently. But Reinhardt now nearly within that delta of 1 second or so for the draft, for the slipstream on the straightaways, and it wasn't that way for a long time in this second run. It's been 1.5, 1.7 seconds. That last lap, trying to get past Kenneth Stepp, really hurt Terry Crouch in the 59 car. Really brought Reinhardt into the conversation where maybe he can try and save some fuel. It's going to be close. Regardless, took not seconds, but tenths of a second off of not only Terry's life, but Terry's lead.
seems to be that Reinhardt is a lot more consistent. He's been pushing, he's been playing in much faster lap times. Let's see Schulteis in pit road. Just one. So we'll see if Clark. Oh, actually, probably not. I was thinking of different positions, but regardless, he's in pit road. He's going to be going to the end now, but for the time being, Reinhardt playing faster lap times than Crouch, but still relatively pretty much almost the exact same distance, 1.9 seconds between the amateur first and second place.
I think it's important to ignore the previous lap for Terry, because the last lap, most recently, we're on lap 34. So lap 33, Terry Crouch had Reinhardt by 2.5 tenths. The lap prior, it was a much different story. Terry lost several tenths to Reinhard Heibel. That was a lap he got caught behind Ken over in turns 9 and 10. And since then, I think Terry obviously sees the situation, knows he needs to get back going, and has opened up a little bit of a gap again. Further back in the field, David Payne, Ola Sarnquist. This is for 9th position. Ola running second in amateur. 2.6 seconds back of Dan Clark, your amateur race leader. We really haven't talked about... We wanted to catch back up with this story after the incident for Chris Schultheis. We never really got a chance to, but here is the UN Spacey Dan Clark machine, car 114 on track. He's been fantastic this season, has a win or two to his name. Easy pick, I think, to at least fight in this amateur championship. You go over and look at the standings. I know he's a little ways back coming into today because he's missed a race or two, but I think if we keep seeing the season go the way it's going and him pick up win after win, very much he's going to still make up points to at least be in the top 5 or so. Maybe not necessarily for the championship like I just said. Maybe I'll eat those words, but at least in the top 5.
And overall, it'd be great because he'd be there by the end of the race, but you still, to get to the end of the race in the, in the first place, you still have to at least, you have to make one more stop. So we'll see how things go as we see David Payne lurking behind, and there goes Sarnquist to pit road.
There's that tricky pit entry. We're on board with Ola Sarnquist for it. He's pushing. Didn't push too hard. I think rather safe entry there.
I'm seeing that a lot with these pit entries, and it's very fascinating to me. I wonder what that would be behind him. We'll be able to ask him pretty much afterwards on why these drivers are being a bit more cautious on pit entry, because you could definitely, there's definitely room to push a little bit more speed.
Here comes Reinhard Heibel into the pit lane earlier than Terry Crouch. This is an interesting sign. This is a really odd situation here. Reinhardt has been the top dog compared to Terry Crouch all season long. Maybe, like I mentioned, a race shock, or maybe Reinhardt doesn't have as much experience, isn't as comfortable, much like I was talking about with Callum McLeod. Maybe that's what it is. I mean, this is very much out of character. At the same time, this could just be a really short stop for Reinhardt to come in, splash and dash, and actually still leapfrog the 59 car. We're yet to find out. We'll find out, I think, this next lap when Terry is due in. Kenneth Stapp, it looks like, into the pit lane, actually exiting here in car 66. He's now 16th. He's got 5 seconds left to James Dowling. Less than a second, though, back to Dustin Oberlo as Sean Cole and David Payne switch spots because David Payne is coming into the pit lane himself in car 73. Here comes Terry Crouch into the pits. Gonna have to be careful. Really pushing into the pit lane. Oh my goodness. He might have sped briefly, but slows down to try and bring the average down. He might just escape a penalty, but that was close.
No, he made it in time. 32 at the line.
Wow. All right, let's see what we got for Terry Crouch. This is the money stop, and this tells us really how this race works out. Reinhard Heibel, a pit box time of 12.6 seconds. We're on board with Terry Crouch. He's gassing it up, ready to go. You see the rev lights, 11.48. This should be Terry's race, and this would be huge for the season. even if Reinhardt was to run the next few races and win the next few races, this is a big-time turning point for Terry to come up here and get a win over Reinhardt Heibel. Now a 2.6-second gap. Reinhardt has been Terry's kryptonite, but not today. Randall White, by the way, in the pit lane here, Josh, and getting that money stop for himself. Here comes David Clymer into the box. Pete Snake in the pit lane as well.
Yep, just getting the last pit stops in before the end here.
There's Pete Snake in. We've got Dan Clark coming down the pit lane. Sean Cole. Dan Clark, your amateur race leader, an important stop here. Let's go on board for Clark during his pit stop. Make sure he gets a solid bit of fuel. As you can see, the sun's setting back there behind the front stretch. Clark already back on the throttle, waiting. 11.33 seconds in the box. A very, very brief stop for him. That's exactly what you want to see at this stage in the race as he exits right in front of Sean Cole. And Chris Schultheis has closed in again. He just simply won't go away. He's going to keep threatening this win here for Dan Clark, going to keep him honest.
I don't blame him. To be fair, I don't blame him. Sean Cole is right in the middle of these two, so he could play spoiler for that overall position of 9th place. Not that the on-track positions, well, the on-track positions matter, but not that the overall positions matter in terms of points. So we'll see if Sean Cole decides to just sit back or move aside for the amateur drivers. As we see the 75 staying in pit lane and 10.65 seconds for that pit stop, and that makes sense. The less time you have remaining, of course, the less fuel you need.
Cars still due to the pit lane. Andrus Slizens, and it looks like he might be headed this way soon. Not yet, though. But Slizens still due in, and Dustin Oberlo still due in, as well as James Dowling, actually. So 3 cars still due to pit. I'm sure we'll see them come in soon. Randall White, just behind Andrus Slizens, I'd imagine, would like to see if he can maybe grab a little bit of that slipstream, get a little closer potentially to Aldous Pudiklis, but it's still going to be a 4 or 5 second gap between those two. Aldous, by the way, a very clean day here, Josh. The Kingsman Racing driver really leading the charge for Kingsman Racing in this race. Andrus Slizens, I think, has been better overall this season, but Aldous really flexing some muscle today, showing he can get it done, and doing so here at Okayama International Circuit. Even when Andrus stays out, still 1 spot behind Aldous. A really fantastic day for Aldous at the office.
He seems to have like a step ahead of Andrus. Yeah. Every pit stop, every lap is like 1 step ahead.
And here comes Slizens into the pit lane. Real close there at the pit entry line. And this should bring, I'd imagine, James Dowling and Dustin Oberlo in shortly as well, as we hit 5 minutes to go. You never want to pit this late, but certainly these guys are going to have to make it to the end on fuel. As Oberlo actually just went by the start-finish line. He's going to keep going. He's going to pit with 4 minutes left or go. And Schultheis, yes, lost some time.
He got loose on corner exit, though.
And this is the battle right in front of him that I think is worth mentioning, actually. Sean Cole might want to consider playing nicely here with Dan Clark. Dan is leading in amateur, and while it wouldn't hurt Dan to let Sean by in points, you want to be careful not to put him in a bad spot and potentially risk a crash.
David Pate is directly ahead, so you know what? If I'm Sean Cole... Oh, never mind! This is going to be very close. Wow! You know what? That works. That was a view, if anything. I was going to say, before all that happened, that shows how fast things can happen in racing. I was going to say is that Sean Cole and who was it? Dan Clark could both essentially, be a train essentially up to David Payne, but Payne had spun out on corner entry, and that just invalidated everything I said before I even had a chance to say it. That was a great onboard shot at the time, though. That was fantastic timing. Yeah,
as you were bringing it up, I saw where you were going with it. I was going to mention it. It looks like for sure. I think Dan and Sean could help each other out. Dan could let Sean go by, and Dan would then be able to draft off of Sean, and Sean could have first bite at David Payne. That is now out the window. Not a problem. So issue solved, as Finally, Dustin Oberlo comes into the pit lane and will take his final bit of service. A very much splash and dash. He only needs a couple of seconds of fuel. I think he'd be back on the racetrack by now as Oxenzoller spins. This out of turn 2? Yes, turn 2 finally, right in front of Wouter Van Mariek. I'm surprised Oberlo took 8.7 seconds. That's a much longer time than I would have expected. We're on lap 40 of a previously expected 44. I think it'll be more like 43 as we take one more lap here. I think that'll be 3 to go.
Just about. Actually, this should be 2. Well, yeah, no, you might be right. 3 to go, and that's 1.23 or a minute 23 seconds. Somehow I read that wrong, but it's a minute 23 seconds per lap. So yeah, 3 to go.
Well, Josh, this race is nearly over. Glad to have you as a guest here today. Terry has, I think, really surprised here today. You've been able to watch this entire season unfold. Gary's a little more green to the field, but you very much in the Simpit. What do you think of Terry's run today and beating out Reinhard so far? And that's with very much fingers crossed because this race is still not over.
Yeah, I'm happy to actually be here for today's race. Terry's done a stellar job today at Okayama, and he continues to do that this entire season, and I expect him to repeat that at Suzuka next week.
Going on by Christian Theis, that puts your amateur P2 driver 1 lap down and actually laps up through 11th position. So only your top 10 left on the lead lap, and that's closing. Only 3 or so seconds up the road to David Payne for Terry Crouch. And with a minute 42, he can definitely close that up. It's going to be close, though, as we have a battle back here. James Dowling, Callum McLeod, this for 15th. And these two not racing for points versus each other, but racing for overall position, as Mike Nickham and Wouter Van Mariek are also very close on the racetrack for 17th and 18th positions, as they follow Andrus Slizens much further up the road, who, by the way, sorted into 6th after the cycle of pit stops. And this battle, far from over. Sean Cole, Dan Clark, as they fire down into the hairpin one more time at turn 5. Clark still up over Sean Cole, and I think Sean has kind of recognized the situation, is playing a lot more nicely, just kind of trying to relieve some of the pressure on Dan.
Just by sitting right in his mirrors.
Yeah, at least took some of the pressure off. Isn't as close, isn't peeking to the inside, but is definitely still there as Terry Crouch moves to the inside of yet another car. That was David Payne. That puts 10th place a lap down. And here we go. Actually, Sean Cole right up to the back end of Dan Clark. Is he going to take a look at a turn 1? The answer is yes. Everything I just said about him taking pressure off of Dan, throw that in the bin as we take the white flag here at Okayama International Circuit. 1 lap to go. Brought to you by Whiplash Simcams. Final time around here in Japan.
What a race it has been. What a great run it's been for Terry, and it shows why he's the class leader for the pros as well. And the performance today just shows exactly why. As absolutely an incredible run. Not over yet, but so far so good.
Clymer and Slizens, they still have to come by the start-finish line one more time to get the white flag, Josh, but they are close. 1.2 seconds apart, so technically still a lap and change to go for them. As Terry runs through the hairpin for the final time, here is Reinhard Heibels on board. Just not able to get there.
Yeah, unless some miracle, divine intervention happens, something.
Thankfully, the racing gods are smiling upon Terry Crouch this afternoon. It's not been that way often. Go back to the GTE season the last time through, over the fall and winter of 2022, and it was a lot of struggles for Terry Crouch, but I think this is a very proving and showing and redeeming win for car 59. Terry Crouch to victory lane at Okayama International Circuit. And Barney might be drunk.
Apparently there's two of them. There's another there's another Barney at the very bottom where you barely see the checkered waving. But this works out great for Dan Clark because he's the only amateur driver on the lead lap.
And it does. A very calm cruise to the checkers as David Clymer and Andrew Slizens battle through the mid portion of the lap. This turn 7, Piper. Redman is up next for turn 8. Then turn 9 is Hobbs. And turn 10 is Mike Knight corner before the final corner at turn 11. Not close enough, though, as Andrew Slizens for this 5th position, although maybe he got closer that time through Hobbs. But it's simply not going to be enough for the 99 car as he will have to settle for 6th place overall. And Sean Cole joining the Dan Clark parade very nearly on that float, if you will, through turn number 8. But Dan Clark, a very easy run to the checkers here for another amateur victory. Chris Schultheis had issues, Ola Sarnquist had issues, and quite simply, Dan Clark kept that car the cleanest. And oh, look at that, Sean Cole drifting in the background for a bit of fun. Formula Drift Japan does go here, but it's a fat W for Dan Clark, a big-time win that he very much needed this season. And hopefully we see him in a more full-time aspect to be able to take advantage of that win, as there's your overall winner, Terry Crouch, another win for car 59. And coming into today, it was a 2-2 split. Terry Crouch, Reinhard Heibel for wins this season, but each of the 2 races that Reinhard had run, Terry lost.
It's also a fantastic job by a great job by Dan Clark. You mentioned he's part-time, but 9th place in the amateur points coming into this, and that's going to be helping him. Even if he's part-time, that's going to be a fantastic stat to put next to your name.
Yeah, I believe it was 2 races that he's missed so far, maybe 1. But certainly a solid job done by the 114 as Terry Crouch brings it into the pit lane. And we'll take a look back at your unofficial race results here, guys. A really solid day here in the virtual Mimasaka, Japan. I really enjoyed this race. Okayama really enjoyed this racetrack, so certainly a league that we enjoy was going to be a lot of fun the entire time. But here we go. Terry Crouch up top by 2.8 seconds. And Gary, that is a big-time margin, though, back to 3rd, 4th, and 5th. The top few guys really had it under control. The rest of this top 10, I think, missing something.
Hey, look, it's that same thing that we saw at the NARL Pro-Am. One amateur driver in the pro class, or in the field, in the top 10 portion of all pro drivers in the NRL's Pro-Am in a World of Pros. But that just shows the testament to how great Dan Clark's race has been. But yeah, that's a very, very dominant race by a lot of these drivers. And of course, we can't really ignore Putekleis because he had a very quiet day, but finishing 3rd place is a fantastic job by his standards, I think.
Absolutely, some big stories up here in the top 10. Dan Clark, that awesome job. Sean Cole, at least, had some trouble, but he hung on to the lead lap just over David Payne. Didn't hang on to that lead lap much, did Sean Cole, or by much anyways, but still on the lead lap as David Payne goes 1 lap down. And Josh here, 11th through 20th. Very different story, a whole lot of red as opposed to a whole lot of green, and I think it's telling that you see just Sanchinelli and Dowling down here. A really good day for the AM guys. They were able to, I think, minimize the mistakes and take advantage of the few mistakes from the pros and pass some of those guys.
Yeah, they definitely said what to do for this race, and they have accomplished that pretty well, I think.
Chris Schultheis there in 11th spot. He had a couple of big mistakes, though, I will say. Ola Sarnquist as well had a mistake or two. Sanchinelli there in 13th spot. Kenneth Stepp there in 14th. James Dowling 15th, had a rough day. Callum McLeod, 16th spot, not able to go as far up the order as I would have imagined. Mike Nickham as well, after speaking with him last week in a podium, finishes 17th here today. Wilder Van Mariek, a very clean race for him. Dustin Oberlo kept it together for 19th spot. Nicholas Batista there 20th. And then to round out your field, Oxenzoller, Clark, and Carl. We do already have our amateur race winner standing by. Gary Weaver, Dan Clark goes to victory lane in amateur.
Yeah, very fantastic job by Dan Clark. And Dan, you had a very dominant day, essentially. You're one of the, or pretty much the only driver of the amateur the amateur class to finish in the top 10 with everyone else. You started in 13th too, so that was overall 4th place out of all the amateurs. And by the end, you show that you pretty much have the best race pace.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks to everybody who raced. It was a lot of fun. I did not get as good a qualifying session as I wanted. My good lap I ended up half spinning, but a lot of practice this week. I've run this track a lot, and I enjoy running it. And you get into that groove. Everything sort of clicked really well. I tried to stay out of trouble and make the shoulders as wide as possible with Sean there at the end.
And it was a very fantastic battle there as well at the end. We did also have a notice that we talked about this at I think just before the broadcast at Stars, that the SR10s are a bit more of a free car. Essentially, they're a lot easier to step out compared to the SR8s here. And even with the SR8s, we noticed that some drivers are being very cautious on pit entry, despite the fact that the entry lane was quite a ways further. So could you give us some insight as to why some drivers are being more cautious?
I think for me, it was not always knowing exactly where the pit speed limiter was supposed to start, because I didn't practice it a lot until today. So for me, coming in the way that you'd come in later, I came in the spot where you're supposed to, and I think I hit the speed limiter a few times a bit too early, not knowing where the line was, because there's 2 or 3 lines. So for me, that's why I was more cautious going through there.
Overall, a very great job coming across or finishing off in the first place position in the amateur class. Do you hopefully plan to at least maybe get a couple races here and or there?
Yeah, for sure. I'm looking to challenge Chris and the rest of the guys who are in front of me for the rest of the season. I love running this car, and it's a whole lot of fun running with these guys. Everybody's so respectful, and it's a lot of good, clean, fun racing. So looking forward to the rest of the season.
Hopefully we do get a chance to see you a bit more often on track, because with this performance, I think everyone here has a lot to look forward to.
Thanks very much.
Dan Clark with a big-time amateur victory. Congratulations to him, as we have your top 2 for the first time, I think, all season from Pro. We'll bring in first Terry Crouch in car 59. And you know what, Josh? First time here with us at Bitstop TV. How about you go ahead and talk to our race winner?
Alrighty. So, Mr. Terry Crouch, how do you feel winning at Okayama today?
I don't think I could feel any better. Reinhardt is so fun to race against when he's here. It's, some zone minutes on the Fitbit, I'll tell you that. I'm sweating.
Oh, I bet. So, you and Reinhardt battled throughout the whole race. Do you think Reinhardt at any point was going to pass you throughout the race, or in the pits, or anything?
Oh yeah, I was just waiting for it, because he did it at Barcelona, he did it at Zandvoort. He's so good, and he doesn't really make any mistakes, and he can keep the car at the limit all the time, that if I make a bobble, I just wait for him to get alongside, and we just kind of made tiny little bobbles back and forth because we were both just pushing so hard.
Mm-hmm. Now, Okayama, how would you describe this track in your own words?
Fun. I really like it. It's tough to pass, other than a couple of those 2 long straights. So it's better than some other tracks. And there's some camber. It's got some good sets, so I'm changing the brake bias 3 or 4 times a lap with the downhills and the camber and the flat, and doing everything I can to try and keep up and stay in front of guys like Reinhardt.
So what else would you have done differently throughout this race?
Go faster.
Go faster.
I don't know what else I could do. I did everything I could. It was about as good as I could do. So I'm, for once, really pleased with the race in total.
Yeah. So one more question. How do you feel about Suzuka next week?
Not as strong. Suzuka is a track that is built to test every single discipline in racing, whether you suck at trail braking or threshold braking or confidence or down, trust in the car. It's going to expose you somewhere. So I expect the lap time splits are going to be wider between the top guys and the rear guys. But, as long as Reinhardt shows, it'll be a fun war every single week. And, the other guys aren't that far off. It's just that, a couple tenths a lap just adds up over an hour.
Makes it for very good, exciting competition battles. And Terry, thanks for the interview, and congrats, man, on the win here.
Thanks. Good to talk to you, Josh. And I got to shout out my wife. She was watching the end of it, and as soon as the checkered flag came across, she stormed into my office and was doing a congratulations dance. So it was awesome.
Awesome.
That's Terry Crouch,
Take care,
overall
guys.
race winner. Congratulations, Terry. 42 laps led this evening. Solid run for him. Let's bring in Reinhard Heibel from Get Pole Racing, who goes position number 2 today. And Reinhard, until today, when you raced, I do believe you were undefeated with your couple of races that you've run so far. Today, a different story. What was that battle like with Terry?
It was very fun today. The pace from Terry was outstanding. The whole race we have the same pace, I think, and at the first pit stop, there was a guy between us, and I lost like 2 seconds, but I pushed like hell, and I can't keep up. Just managed the gap, and Terry won this race, and
A straight-up
was
duel
just
then,
fun.
but that one car in between. What can you do then next week at Suzuka to try and reverse this? Will we have you in the field, I should say, next week?
Suzuka, the thing is always to have trust in the car. This is my 3rd race, the 4th race in the car, and it's all about to get confident and trust the car and to get in the flow, to get fast, and I think that's all about it.
And on a very partial schedule so far, at least for you this season, you're still earning a lot of points. You're in the top 10 in points, and I think going to move up quite a bit here today. Is there any kind of goal you have? I'd imagine working around whatever schedule you might have that holds you back from being full-time. Is there any kind of goal, or just go out there and see what you can get and have fun?
Not really. I just have fun, and I just have fun, and maybe I can get in top 3. I don't know from the points. I think I can participate the next races. So I go hunting. It's right.
And how about the team aspect as well? We haven't really talked to you or Pete yet this season, but Get Pole Racing, really good to see both of you guys in the field, by the way. Love the liveries, love the colors. You very much stand out. It looks like Pete maybe just a couple of steps behind. How do you get him a few steps further ahead to race with you and Terry?
We built the setup together to get confident, and basically we drive, I think, the most safe setup in the field, as it feels like this, and and we go through the telemetry and things, and trying to getting better.
Well, Reinhardt, thanks for your time. Congratulations. Position number 2 today. Only a couple of seconds off of Terry as well. I'm sure that'll flip back around next time you guys race. It'll be a lot of fun. But congratulations once again. Thanks for your time, and we'll see you next week in Japan.
Thank you.
Reinhard Heibel with position number 2, and I do believe that's the first time we've spoken to him this season. Glad to finally be able to do so here at Pit Stop TV. And that wraps it up as far as on-track action, guys. Gary, first of all, final thoughts from your first Simpit Radical Series event.
It's really good. It was absolutely amazing, especially with it happening to be Okayama. I greatly enjoyed it. I miss this track. I love it at the same time, and I really need to think about more fun but also chaotic, essentially, combinations with certain cars in this track. It's going to be fascinating. Again, Long Beach is one that really sticks out to me. You don't really expect to see these cars on circuits like Long Beach, so I'm very intrigued to see how that plays out for next week, or 2 weeks from now, actually.
Yeah, definitely an interesting set of races coming up to the end of the season here, Josh. Which one stands out to you? Which are you looking most forward to?
Well, I actually would say that, for Road America, it's got the straight line speed. Canadian Tire's got a couple challenging corners. Long Beach, you're all walled in on all sides, so there's not much leeway at all. But Suzuka, I think, would be probably what I'm watching for. The Interlagos, I'm about there in the same boat too.
we still have, let's see, two Formula One courses left with, let's see, a series of overall, I think 5 of them. So a lot of actually non-Formula One style racetracks coming up. I think Gary's right that Long Beach certainly stands out, but I think the one that stands out the most to me personally, and this might just be because of the age of the scan, is Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. It is a very old scan on iRacing. It lacks a lot of the nicer curbing, if you will, that we see on that course nowadays. Certainly a very, very behind scan, but it's also a nice throwback in a way. It's a lot like the legacy tracks we now see from some oval tracks, because we've had updates through the NASCAR Cup Series and what have you. But Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, very much a step back in time when you race it here on iRacing.com. That, I think, really stands out to me. That's a very, very old scan there for Canada, but we'll see how that goes for round number 8. It was a lot of fun here today at Okayama, but let's see what we have coming up here at Pit Stop TV. Next up, the iRacing Cars Late Model Stock Tour going to Hickory Motor Speedway tomorrow evening in virtual Newton, North Carolina to open up the month of May here at Pit Stop TV. Then Wednesday, Gary, you and I back on the call for Kansas Speedway May 3rd, round 11 of 12 for the UFL Elite Series. It's going to be a lot of fun at 9 p.m. Eastern. A lot of storylines on the chopping block, I suppose, if you will, and a lot of drivers on that chopping block. We're eliminating 8 of the 12 that are currently in the playoffs to get ourselves a championship for Charlotte the week after.
Yeah, one driver, Zach Nichols, has already locked himself in with his win at North Wilkesboro, and that leaves pretty much the entire rest of the playoff grid scrambling. Some in a actual must-win situation, some probably going to be winning just to see, just to scramble everything. So we'll see how that goes. It will be a very, very wild race, though, at Kansas for the finale, essentially, at least in terms of the regular season,
and then
playoff season, rather.
Absolutely, and then Gary Weaver goes from behind the mic to back behind the wheel on Thursday evening for Imola in the North American Racing League. Round number 2 for those guys. Going to be headed out to Italy for the Porsche Cup season. Season number 3 of Porsche Cup Racing. That's season 7 overall of NARL Racing on Pit Stop TV. I'm excited to go for round 2 on May 4th. And of course, next week we go to Suzuka here for the Simpit Radical Series. But keep up with everything Pit Stop TV on social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitch. The whole lot of them. We'll see you there. One more time, Josh, got to check back in with you. First show of Pit Stop TV now complete. What was it like?
It was pretty good, pretty amazing. It's been a while since I've actually been with an iRacing broadcasting group. So getting back in the swing of things, it's nice. Glad to be back in the booth, really.
Well, it was a pleasure to have you behind the mic today for us, and maybe we continue this trend of having you in for a guest for the Simpit Radical Series. We'll see. Really all depends on availability and how things work out, but we certainly would love to have you for some races later on this season. But that will do it for us this evening. Big shout out to Gomez Sim Industries, as always, a big partner here of the the Simpit Radical Series. There we go. And a special shout out as well to Sean Cole. It looks like the Friday live streams are doing as good as ever. Of course, a lot of content over on the Simpit on YouTube, and Sean, of course, is the driving force behind the Simpit and content like that. It's always good to see what new reviews are coming out, whether it's BeamNG or a new piece of sim hardware, what have you. It's always fun to keep in touch. And of course, a big shout out to our partners and just those who make it happen for us here at Pit Stop TV in audio: ATVO, Whiplash SimCams, OBS, and iRacing.com. That'll do it for us this evening. We'll see you next time, hopefully tomorrow night, from Hickory Motor Speedway for the iRacing Cars Late Model Stock Tour, brought to you by Elite Performance Industries.